So basically it was when I was 21 was when it really first sort of started, and I was in my final 6 months of 4 years of pretty arduous military training in Canberra at the Royal Military College Duntroon, and it was June 2013, the 18th of June. I remember that date pretty well because it was my dad's birthday, and I remember calling my dad to wish him happy birthday, and on a completely unrelated side note I said, look Dad, I've got this little lump on my right testicle, and it had probably been there upwards of 12 months. So it'd been there for a while, and I kind of put it off because it didn't really hurt. And I think, like a lot of young, naive blokes, I thought it would just go away on its own. So my dad kind of said, mate, why don't you go off to the doctor? And I did, seemed pretty obvious. And after having my ball inspected from the doctor, it had an ultrasound. Basically within 24 hours, I'd found myself in the doctor's rooms by myself in Canberra being told I had testicular cancer. Yeah, you feel pretty vulnerable, and I was pretty scared at the time because, I didn't know much about cancer, and I thought, cancer was people who, end up, unfortunately dying from these terrible disease, and I thought, was I going to be one of those people? So I didn't know much about it, but at the same time, I tried to put up a very positive, front and an, optimistic front, and I suppose that was probably my first real experience with mental health, and I kind of kept that hidden and pushed that to the side because it wasn't really a priority at the time. I just thought, well, I have to get through this, and so I did. So basically the journey with testicular cancer went on for the next couple of years. Chemotherapy and some pretty invasive surgeries, held my lymph nodes removed and had my testicle removed. And fortunately, after 5 years, I got the all clear scan. And I remember the feeling well, I cracked open a bottle of champagne, cheers with my partner. We kind of celebrated because I was cancer free. I felt like cancer no longer defined who I was. I felt like a normal young bloke at the stage. I was 26 at that stage, so fast forwarding a little bit. I'd been promoted to captain, which was awesome. And I was ready to sort of embark on my next journey in life. But unfortunately that feeling only really lasted a couple months. I found myself with some stomach issues and a few complications and a few bowel, inconsistencies, and ended up having a colonoscopy. I didn't think too much of it until I got a call the next day from my gastroenterologist to go see him that afternoon, and I knew something was up, and I had this sinking feeling in my stomach. And remember, going off to the appointment with my partner, and I could see the look on the doctor's face, and we walked in there, and he just turned the screen around and said, mate, look, I'm sorry to say, but we got the colonoscopy results back and you got bowel cancer. And I remember thinking, that was 2 months after I've just been told I got all clear for testicular cancer. And then all of a sudden at 26, I've just been told I had bowel cancer, and it was completely unrelated, completely separate cancer. I'll never forget leaving that doctor's rooms, and I was probably a couple metres in front of my partner, and I just burst into tears. I remember getting in the car and calling up my mum and my dad and my twin brother. And look, I'm not a father myself, I wouldn't know what it's like, but to hear, the pain in my family's voices. And I remember my dad, clear as day, saying, look Dad, I've got bowel cancer. And I'm fighting back these tears, and I could just see him get really emotional. And it's a real emotional time because, you can't help it, but you're causing your family so much pain. I then had to go on a pretty long journey with surgeries, and had to have most of my bowel removed, and that pretty quickly. So basically the next couple of years I went and had multiple surgeries. I had 6 months of immunotherapy treatment, was on steroid medication, and just tried everything I could to get rid of this cancer. And that really took me till sort of the end of last year, end of 2019, when I had basically the last resort, which was to remove the entire colon, the entire large bowel, and the entire rectum, because they said, look mate, it's going to be the only real way we can promise you that you'll be cancer free. So I did that. I was in hospital for about 4 or 5 weeks, and that was difficult, and that's when I really did get depressed, and that's when I really am passionate with my mental health, because I tried to put on this brave smile, but I couldn't eat or drink for about sort of 3 weeks. I lost 22 kilos in hospital, and I was very sick, and my partner would come in and try, keep me happy and sort of, keep my spirits high. And I remember I'd try and be upbeat, but as soon as she would leave, I'd just break down in tears every night. The pain I was in with my mental health and those real dark days was more painful than some of that physical pain I actually had. That's how I can relate it to someone who's never experienced mental illness and how painful and really damaging it can be. Eventually, through the support of my family and my friends and the amazing work from the doctors and surgeons, I eventually got through it, could start eating again. And I had to have what's called an external bag, an ileostomy bag or a stoma for about 6 months, which I called TED. I kind of would go to the beach and take my top off and happily show my stoma, and it wouldn't worry me because, you know, I was almost proud of what I'd gone through, that I wasn't ashamed of that. There was a time where I had almost a unique opportunity to do something about this. And I could either play the victim card and say life sucks, which I still get down days, or I thought, you know what, I'm going to use what I've gone through to try and help other people. That's when I started to be an ambassador for Movember and these other amazing foundations, and start my own initiative called 25 Stay Alive. And then I'm also doing a podcast at the moment, a mental health podcast called Behind the Uniform. And that's kind of where I am today. And very in the early days of that, we're doing some recording and speaking to some inspirational people about their mental health. And yeah, it's awesome. From looking back from where I've been to where I am now, I'm in a pretty good place. I've still got some hurdles to overcome, but when you're cancer free after what I've gone through, it's an amazing feeling. It's been a big journey, and I've still got hurdles to overcome. You know, I still see a psychologist every couple of weeks. I know my mental health is pretty fragile, but I know that and I'm willing to work on it, which is so important. And to be honest with you, I'm you know, as cliche as it sounds, I'm definitely one of the lucky ones, because unfortunately there are so many people that aren't as lucky as me, and they're not sitting here right now to tell their story. So if I can try and do what I can to make sure that there are more people like me that are living and living a great life, well, that's the most important thing.